I did my presentation on Baba Yaga. It is a European folklore. It was very hard to find because most European stories are already translated. I guess you can say they're very basic. They're well known around the world. So a lot of them were inspired by religion. They all have common morals. Most of them were inspired by Christianity, the ones we hear today. So Baba Yaga, it's a tale of two kids. It's very similar to Hansel and Gretel, but it's Russian. Hansel and Gretel is German. So there's many different, I should say, variations. The story is passed down family to family, and it just switched from there. So here's some examples of European folk stories. Little Red Riding Hood, Robin Hood, Goldilocks. Can anyone tell me any other examples of stories they think that's European?
Snow White.
Snow White. Anyone else? Cinderella. Just common
Sleeping Beauty.
Disney stories. Sleeping Beauty.
Frozen. Mary Poppins. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
The Sound
Well,
of Music.
shh.
I'm sorry.
Right. Well, there's many forms of European stories, and I was basically set on folklore. That's why it was so hard to find. Not also did I find a story that wasn't well known, but it's very hard to relate as well. So there's many forms of them. There's epics, fables, and stories written all throughout similar, if not completely alike. All right. So Baba Yaga story again similar to Hansel and Gretel. Two kids, they have a wicked stepmom because their mom dies, and their wicked stepmom was very envious of them because their father treated them very well. And the stepmom wanted basically all the attention from the father, so she sent them out to her wicked grandma, or the kid's step grandma, which their step grandma was the witch Baba Yaga. And at first the kids go to the regular grandma, and their grandma says, "I have no power over this. Just do what you do." And she gives them food. She gives them ham, cookies, milk. And again, similar to Hansel and Gretel, and Baba Yaga's characteristics, how it's described, it's very similar to the witch in Hansel and Gretel, except she doesn't live in a candy house. She lives in a metal shack, and she has metal teeth and metal legs. It's just odd. So the importance of folklore, it's very important to remember because for one, it's not also just history, but it teaches kids a common moral, and even though it's morals, they can be easily foreshadowed when the story starts. They can actually easily be forgotten. So many of these stories are told to benefit people's children, and that's why the stories change. For example, there's an Icelandic story where if kids are bad, a monster named Gyla, I can't pronounce the name, but it's Gyrla, would come into their house on Christmas and eat them. So kids were, I guess, better, and I guess they thought the story was too much because they don't want kids being scared of being eaten on Christmas. So, all right. So, these stories are often told to benefit children's lives and well-being. Folklore has an important culture. It just shows how life was written, how things were written back in the day, just how regular people lived. All right. All right, so this shows some of the common morals. Here is Icelandic witch, Gryla, and there she has a sack of children. I guess they were bad, so she's going to eat them on Christmas. And here's even Joseph and his brothers. This is the story from Genesis. Joseph, he was well favored by his father. He was given an amazing coat, and his brothers were very envious, and they sold him to slavery. They were going to kill him, but they thought it'd be better if they just sold him because they would receive profit. And here's Baba Yaga. You see the witch and the two children. The here's my connections to Genesis. It was Joseph and his brothers. Now, the difference is Joseph, he was only one, but his siblings were very envious of him, just like the stepmother was very envious to her stepchildren. And so they were outcasted. Joseph was sold into slavery, and similarly, the kids were sold into slavery too to the witch. They were forced to work for their step-grandma, Baba Yaga, and she was, if they didn't do what she said, she'd eat them, just like slaves. If they didn't do what they were told to, they would be killed or tortured. Okay, and also at the end, when children encounter their father from escaping from Baba Yaga, how they escape is different though. They throw a towel on the ground, it forms a large lake, and Baba Yaga has time. She has to take time to cross it, so that's how they escape. Baba Yaga then catches up to them. They throw a cone on the ground, and it creates a huge forest, and that's how they escape from the evil witch when she chases them. But when they escape, they find their father, and when they do, he just makes the stepmother and the new stepchildren move away, and the children forgive their father for, being blind about the evil stepmother. And just like Joseph, he becomes the Pharaoh's, say like he has an agricultural program, he's one of the pharaohs of Egypt. You should say he's one of their leaders. And what he does, there was a huge famine, and they gave out grain. So what they would do, Joseph gave out grain, and then 20, 30 years later, his stepbrothers and his father come into Egypt to try and get grain because of the large famine, and his stepbrothers his brothers noticed Joseph, and they were just shocked where he's at because they thought he was dead, sold as a slave, which is really just amazing. And it just shows forgiveness, which is one of the main things you can find in Genesis. And so he sees his father, and he forgives his father and his brothers, and his father asks him when he dies to be buried. And Joseph says when he finds out when his father dies, he will bury him in that place. Also, in some version of Baba Yaga, the brother dies, or there's no brother at all, but the sister, she actually escapes the witch and marries the Tsar of Russia, so she becomes a higher power. And just like Joseph, he becomes a higher power of Egypt. I'm missing a slide. It's supposed to have something on Beowulf and
Well, just talk to us about it.
Okay, so the theme of Beowulf and Baba Yaga are very similar. It's good versus evil. And the witch, he's trying to kill them, working the slaves, that's good versus evil. And Beowulf, he kills monsters, it's good versus evil. But instead of running from the witch, I think Beowulf would rather slay the witch or kill her rather than run, because that's, he's arrogant, it's typical. So, and as of Gilgamesh, he travels with his companion Enkidu, and the brother and sister travel with each other. The themes are very different though. But when they travel, Enkidu dies, and just like some versions, the brother dies. So that's the similarities between them. And I do have a video, and I don't know if we'll have much time.
You've got a minute.
Okay, this video is 3 minutes. It's just a visual representation. So not a hyperlink. Yeah, and we might want to turn the volume down. Okay, well basically it's a visual representation. It doesn't have sound to it. It has some screaming from the witch. But it's just basically a book, and it shows what happens, but at the end it's really weird because the father takes out a gun and shoots the stepmother, which that's highly inaccurate. So that was my presentation on Baba Yaga, European folklore, and my Vegan Integrations Connections project.
Great. Fantastic.